Hi everyone, it's Tammy with Shabby Fabrics. I am here today with the most amazing tool, square on square 8-inch trim tool. And you might think, what in the heck am I going to make with that, Tammy? Well, I have two very cool blocks that are very different but made the same way. I want to show you. So the first one is just a regular square in a square. Sometimes when you make these blocks, they're difficult to do. I've seen a lot of different ways to do this, where maybe you start in the middle and you're taking squares and you are drawing a line and you're just doing sew and flip all the way around. Sometimes those are hard to get straight. You usually need to re-square them up, figure out how to make it a square block again, and then continue adding more squares. That takes a lot of fabric and a lot of time. The tool that I have makes this block very easy. Now this is a Creative Grids tool. This is by Jean Ann Wright, and this is a square on square 8-inch trim tool. So your block is going to finish at 8 inches. So it's 8.5 inches unfinished. So if you have a pattern that uses one of these blocks in a 4-inch, 6-inch, or an 8-inch size, you can easily grab this tool, use these directions, and you're good to go. All right, so let me show you how easy that really is. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to build this block right here, and we're going to start with a 2.5-inch square, just like that. I'm then going to cut some triangles. So I'm going to refer to my tool because all of my cutting instructions are on the tool. Yep, you heard me. You are not going to have to go find your directions or go download something to figure out how in the heck to cut your blocks or your pieces to make this. They're right here on the tool. So for block A1, I need two 3-inch squares cut in half on the diagonal. That's what I've done here. All right. So I'm going to put one on one side and one on the other, just like that. Sew across. Here's what this looks like. Okay. Now, I have little triangles sticking out on either side. My next direction is to take my triangles and put them on either side, just like this. Well, when I do that, do you see how these triangles are in my way? I can't see my 1/4-inch seam allowance when I take this to my machine. I realized that immediately. So I took my little pair of Karen K. Buckley scissors that I keep next to my machine, and I simply snipped these corners right off, just like this. I'm going to cut all 4 of them. I don't need them. There we go. Just like that. Now, when I put this on here, oh, look at that. I can easily see my 1/4-inch. So I'm going to turn this over. I am now going to center this, looking at my little points on either side. I'm going to put a pin in that. I don't want that to go anywhere. I want that to stay nice right where it is. I put a couple of pins in this. Just like that. Okay, so let's take that to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start with a 1/4-inch right here, right where this 2 fabrics meet. Right here in this V is right where a 1/4-inch is. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to sew all the way down to this end. Let's go do that. All right, trim my threads. That's exactly what I want. Let's do it again on the other side. Again, I'm just going to center this on here. Now I'm just eyeballing this. If you wanted, you could make this perfect, but I'm just going to make these ends even, roughly 1/4 of an inch on each side is how much is sticking out, right? I'm going to put a pin in it and another pin. I'm using my Clover Extra Fine Patchwork pins for this. And I'm pinning away from my seam allowance. I'm about, I'd say a good healthy quarter plus away from my seam allowance, so I can just sew straight down and I don't have to worry about taking out my pins. I'm going to go sew this and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's take our pins out and let's press this. So I'm just going to flip these triangles. I'm just going to open them up and press right to that red triangle on both sides. Just like that. Perfect. All right. Now let's go to our tool. So this block right here, my center square, is the center. This, what I have added, is called block A1. So that is what you're going to use, is block A1. I'm going to use this white square right here in the middle of this block to trim this. Let me show you how that works. Ha, beautiful. You see how this white square perfectly fits right around the center of that? Block A1. I know that I'm trimming this correctly. I'm going to use a spinning mat. This is a Creative Grids rotating mat. And I'm just going to trim this off here just like this on two sides. Now I'm going to turn my block, reposition my tool, squaring that white square perfectly on top of my 2.5 inch square. And now I'm going to trim again. 1, 2. All right. Now, that was A1. Now I'm ready for A2. What does A2 say? It says cut 2 3.5 inch squares, cut in half on the diagonal. Okay. That's easy, right? Here are 2 3.5 inch squares, cut in half on the diagonal. No problem. Now, I'm going to add these. Let's see what that looks like. Look at that. Perfect. All right, again, I sewed 2 and then the other 2, and I just press those right out, right toward the triangles. Okay? So now I just used A2. So now I'm doing block A2. You see this black line right here? This indicates the center now of my block. So you don't want to use A1 again because that's not good. We don't want to cut that much off. I want to use A2, which is right here. So now I'm filling the space that we just created. Look at that. Here, my black line is perfectly lined up with my center, block A2. I know I'm doing this right because these are my A2 triangles. And now we trim. Rotate, trim again. Let's rotate our block, reposition our tool. You know, I love how perfect this makes it. This tool is cutting exactly 1/4 inch on the outside of my points. This makes it so easy to hit your points when you're doing this. I absolutely love tools like that. You know what? I need to move this block a little bit different here so I can trim this side and this side. Let's do this. There we go. All right, so now I have A2 is lined up for the second trim, this side and this side. Here we go. 1 and 2, just like that. Wow, look at that. Now, how big is that? Well, let's check. Oh, look at that. It's a perfect 4.5 inches. So if you have a pattern that calls for a 4.5 inch square in a square block, here you go. Perfect. How easy that was to sew. It's perfect. I didn't have to stress, and I did not waste that much fabric. This is what I trimmed off of that. So I think I trimmed a lot less off of this block than you do when you're doing sew and flip, because there you're trimming. Half of your square is gone every single time, times 8. That's a lot of fabric that you're wasting, where here I just have a little bit. Seems like a lot to trim off, but I like oversizing blocks and trimming them to size. It ensures that your block is the correct size. Your points are perfect here. You're not going to have a problem putting this into a quilt. All right, so now I have a 4.5 inch. Let's take a look. What's next? Let's say I want to do a 6.5 inch block. Well, then I'm going to add B1. I need 2 4.5 inch squares cut in half on the diagonal. So let's look at that. Here's a 4.5 inch square on half on the diagonal. Look how big that's getting. Yeah? All right, let's look at it. Here it is. Perfect. All right, so I just added B1. So now I'm going to follow block B1 for my trimming guide. Block B1 is white. Look how perfect this fits in the center of this block. That is amazing. It is perfect, right where it needs to be. I'm ready to trim again. You can see it's adding my 1/4 inch on each one of my points. Cut, cut. Let's turn, rotate our tool. This is where I get turned around. There it is. Perfect. Just like that. Okay. And cut my remaining 2 sides. Just like that. All right. I have a perfect 6.5 inch block now. That's awesome. Let's just go all the way for 8. What the heck? All right, for 8 inch, I need B2, and I need 2 5.5 inch squares cut in half on the diagonal. Okay, let's grab those. Look at that. See how nice those fit? Perfect. All right. This is what I've got right here. Now, to trim up your final block, I'm going to use block B2, and that's this very large black square right here in the center of the tool. Look how perfect this fits. Oh, that is amazing. Look at that. Now, I simply trim all 4 sides. Let's go ahead and do that. You know, this is where a rotating mat really comes. It just really shines here. All 4 sides, just like that. And I have a perfect 8.5 inch square in a square block. Very cool. So what I did with this is I added a couple of 1.5 inch strips, and then I just layered it with 2 layers of Insulbrite, and I made a hot pad out of this. This is beautiful. This is going to go in the middle of my table. I can set a hot casserole dish on this, any type of a hot pan. With 2 layers of Insulbrite, I know that my tabletop will be well protected, and I love it. I love the size. This finished at 12.5 inches. All right, so this tool now is very versatile, and I want to show you another block. I told you I could make several blocks from this. Look at this one. Now this, instead of piecing our 4.5 inch center, I simply started with a 4.5 inch block in the center and then added B1 and B2 triangles, just like that. Still have an 8.5 inch block, still a square and a square, just a different look. All right, I have one more fun one I want to show you. Look at this. How cool is a Snail's Trail block? And you're thinking, no, Tammy, that's a completely different thing. No, actually it's not. It's done with this exact same tool. Let me show you how quick this is. So you notice I started in the center with a little 4-patch. I'm going to put this one up here. He can sit in the middle there. There we go. Okay, so I started with a 4-patch. So on here, on my tool, it shows me down here in this bottom corner a little cutting area to cut a 2.5-inch pieced square. So they had me take 2 white 2-inch squares and 2 red 2-inch squares, put them together into a 4-patch. I just popped my little center open, pressed it, however you like. All right, so now let's trim this up to 2.5 inches. I found this much easier to do, even though I'm wasting some fabric on the sides. Again, I think oversizing a block and cutting it down is definitely the way to go. I love that. The precision and the accuracy I get when I oversize something and then trim it up is well worth the small amount of fabric that I waste by trimming. All right, now I have a perfect 2.5-inch 4-patch right there. Very quick, very easy. All right, so now I'm going to add A1. We're going to add our triangles. So this is where we have to pay attention to how the triangles go actually on here, right? Because let's get our block back and take a look at this. So we want our whites to come out of there and spin around, right? You want your reds to spin. Everything is spinning in the same direction. So if I place my little 4-patch just like this, I see that I need a white one right here. Now, in the directions that they give you with your tool, this comes with your tool, they do the Snail's Trail block at the very end. And this is where I learned how to do this, all right? So they have the white here, the light, the dark, and now we put the dark on top and the dark on the bottom and the light here and the light here. This is how this diagram is starting. So let's turn our block so that it looks the same, just like this. So you have your dark on top and the bottom and your light on both sides. My white and my red are in this direction, just like that. Okay? Let's look at that. There it is, just like that, sewn together. Sewn exactly the same way. You see I clipped the edges of my triangles off when I did my red triangles. I clipped the corners on them, added my white triangles. This is what I come up with. So now when I trim this, I am simply going to use block A1 because these are the A1 triangles. Block A1 goes in the center. And this fits right in there because we trim this, right? Look how perfect that is. It fits exactly in the center. And now I can trim and trim both sides of this. Whoop. There we go. Okay, I'm going to rotate my block. Lay my tool back down. Kind of get it aligned there where I want it. And trim twice. 1, 2. Whoop. I'm not pressing hard enough, I think, on my blade. It's a fairly new blade. I'm just not pressing hard enough on it. There we go. All right, there we go. There's my piece. And this goes right here in the center of this. okay? All right, so now we're gonna add our A2 triangles. So again, I have two different colors of triangles. I have white and red, right? So your white ones, I want them to go in a circle, right? Spin them around. Whoop, here he is right here. There's my triangles. And my red ones. You're spinning them around, so you always make sure that your reds touch your reds, your whites touch your whites, like this. My red touches my red, my whites touch my whites, and they're spinning in a circle. All right? This is A2 triangles. So again, I use A2 to trim that up, just like this. You can see how quick and easy you could make a bunch of these blocks. I put these blocks together fairly quickly for this tutorial. I sat at my machine. I think I cut for maybe an hour to cut a bunch of pieces so that I had enough triangles to do all of this, enough squares and triangles. I think picking the fabric was the hardest. Trying to find all my reds and figure out what I was gonna do. There we go. There's my next block. Okay, you can see it fits in there just like that. All right, and then we have our next one, which is this one. Whites are still spinning, reds are spinning. This is B1, right? B1 is next. B1 sits in the middle. Exactly the same as what you just did to make your other ones. There we go. There's B1. And one more time. I'm going to rotate. Set B1 back in the middle. There he is. And trim my block. All right, so now you can see the pattern is much easier to see in this block. So now we know that we're definitely going to add this triangle. Let's look at this block. See, it gets set on point because you're going this way and this way and this way and this way. And it does not matter if you add your red first or your white first. That's entirely up to you. As long as you add your white to both sides at the same time and then your red, you're good to go. It's whatever you'd like to do. That is how I made a snail trail block with the same tool. I love it when a tool is versatile and I can make many different blocks. Where's my other one here? I can make all these different blocks and any variation thereof just with one tool. It's a great way to make scrap quilts, to put something together if you're a scrap quilter. The pre-cuts, I would not use pre-cuts for this. You could use a charm square for the middle of this. You can use 2.5-inch squares, but other than that, you're cutting 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, I think, and 5.5. Yeah, 4.5 and 5.5 inch squares to cut into triangles to put on your blocks. So that's all there is to making a square on square block. I found this tool very easy to use. It's very helpful. My blocks look amazing. I love that it makes 3 different sizes, a 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch. I can also make a snail's trail block just as easily as I made all the others. That really made me happy. So, what do you do with these blocks? Well, I turned one into a hot pad. I love hot pads. I think this is great. You can download the free instructions. Just click the link right below this tutorial and it will show you the steps on how to make this. I did use 2 layers of Insulbright batting. Thank you again for joining me for this tutorial. I really enjoyed spending some time with you. I appreciate your time, and I will see you next time on a Shabby Fabrics tutorial.